Hey guys, it's Alex the Real Mr. Robinson here. So we are less than a month away from the next installment in the Star Wars saga, Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. I'm so fucking pumped for it because it's Star Wars. I love Star Wars. So what am I going to be doing this year as a lead up to the new Star Wars movie? Back when The Force Awakens came out, I reviewed the original 6 Star Wars films in the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. But when I did my reviews for the original trilogy, I made a point to leave something specific out of those reviews because I didn't think it would be fair to the movies themselves. And those were the special edition changes. Here's a little background just in case you don't know about this. Back in 1997, during the franchise's 20th anniversary, 20 years ago, George Lucas re-released the original trilogy in theaters in prep for the prequel trilogy coming out. But with this theatrical re-release, he decided to enhance the movies because by this point, films like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park had come out, which revolutionized special effects with CGI. So with those two movies breaking all kinds of ground, George Lucas felt like technology had finally caught up with his original vision of Star Wars, so he re-released the 3 films in theaters with a lot of changes to be had. And they are incredibly controversial changes. And he didn't stop in 1997. Back when the trilogy was released on DVD for the first time in 2004 and on Blu-ray for the first time in 2011, he continuously kept changing the movies and adding little things here and there. So that's what this entire series of videos is going to be. For the next few weeks leading up to The Last Jedi, I will be talking about all of the special editions that are really of notice throughout the entire original trilogy. I won't be going over the prequels because there's just not that much to talk about and people honestly don't care about those changes that much. So how it's going to work is I'm going to go in chronological order of when they appear in the movie. That means I'll be jumping around from 1997, 2004, 2011, back and forth, yada, 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 yada. So now that I got that intro out of the way, let's start with Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And the first change is actually something that was not featured in the 1997 special edition for the first time. And that simply is A New Hope. Back in 1981, the original Star Wars was re-released in theaters, but George Lucas added in the subtitle Episode 4, A New Hope, because by that time, The Empire Strikes Back had come out, so George Lucas decided to add in Episode 4, A New Hope. And to be honest, I'm not one of these guys that gets butthurt when people refer to the first Star Wars as A New Hope. I know there are a lot of people out there who do get butthurt about that, and you know what? That's fine, because they grew up with the movies since they came out in theaters. I didn't. I grew up with this movie with the subtitle A New Hope, so that just kind of stuck with me. And plus, it's an ongoing franchise, so it's just helpful to label this one as A New Hope. So that's what happened in 1981. George Lucas added the subtitle. However, I will admit that the subtitle for A New Hope, when I first saw the original movie, and then thinking about all the subtitles, didn't really make a whole lot of sense. It wasn't until the prequels were finished, I finally understood why the first movie was called A New Hope. And it also really helps with Rogue One because now A New Hope has 2 different meanings. A New Hope for the Rebellion because of the Death Star plans being stolen, and then A New Hope in the form of Luke Skywalker who will bring balance to the Force. So I love how the movie now has 2 different meanings because of 2 different movies. So that's the first change. Let's get into the first change that's actually presented in the special editions. And that's the extended search party on Tatooine trying to find the Death Star plans in the escape pod that crashed. In the theatrical version, it was just a few stormtroopers looking around. Someone was in the pod. The tracks belong in this direction. Look, sir, droids. And that was it. In the special edition, they reshot some scenes with stormtroopers walking around. They inserted some CGI dewbacks, which look fine, but the stormtroopers riding the dewbacks look awful because, again, this was early CGI, so nobody had really gotten down the movement of humans quite yet. And it's honestly pointless. It doesn't really add anything except make the search party that much bigger because, you know, with the Death Star plans being stolen, that's a huge fucking priority. But one little detail that I never really noticed, and I gotta thank Hello Greedo for pointing this out, was that you can tell that these scenes were shot for the special editions in 1997 because the Stormtrooper helmets are actually the ones from Return of the Jedi, not A New Hope. Because when you look at the little like mark underneath their eyes, they're black like they are in Return of the Jedi as opposed to gray like they are in A New Hope. A good example of this comes from a change inside the Death Star. When Han Solo chases a bunch of Stormtroopers and he comes across a dead end in the theatrical version or a hangar in the special editions. When you look at the Stormtroopers in the hangar, you can tell that they have the black arch as opposed to the Stormtroopers that were in the original version where they have the gray arch. It doesn't bug me like it does some people, but it's a little neat bit of trivia there. The next change comes from the 2011 Blu-ray release, which this release of Star Wars has the most pointless changes to all three movies, and I'll elaborate more as I talk about Empire and Jedi. But this first change involves a bunch of CGI rocks being digitally placed in front of R2-D2. This change makes no sense for a multitude of reasons. For one, how did R2-D2 manage to squeeze behind those rocks? Two, it's distracting because our focus is supposed to be on R2-D2 as he's trying to hide poorly from the Tusken Raiders that have dragged Luke and are now scavenging his land speeder. We don't want to see this pointless CGI rock that's just honestly distracting. We want to focus on the main focus, R2-D2. And three, by adding this rock in, George Lucas created a continuity error because when you look at the over-the-shoulder view of R2-D2, the rock's not there. When R2-D2 comes out of hiding after Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ben Kenobi saves Luke's life, the rocks aren't there. So if you're at least gonna change it, at least keep continuity. It's stupid that they don't keep continuity, but then again, it's even more stupid that this change exists. The next change is actually an evolving change that started with the 2004 DVD and then was changed for the 2011 Blu-ray. And that's Obi-Wan's Banshee cry to scare off the Tusken Raiders. In the original version, the cry was very pitched and very, I won't say subtle, but it sounds very animal-like. And this is going to be the one time in my reviews where I'm going to use audio clips from the movie, praying to God I don't get a copyright claim or a strike. So here's what it sounds like in the theatrical version. See, it sounds very animalistic-like and somewhat alien. It sounds very fitting to Star Wars. Now, in the 2004 DVD version, it was changed to this. You know what? It's still very effective. It's a little more peaceful and not as monstrous as the original cry, but I'd say it's pretty effective. And then we get to the 2011 Blu-ray cry, and here, just listen for yourself. Wow. That is like, I remember hearing about this change or hearing that exact change before this Blu-ray was even released. And I'm like, did I just really hear that shit? And it's so much worse when you actually watch the movie because you're so distracted by the last change I mentioned, those CGI rocks, that you're going to completely forget that his Banshee cry was changed. Or was it a Crate Dragon cry? Whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, it's so goofy and it's just... I can't help but smile or smirk whenever I listen to that sound or even think about it, but not in a good way. It is hands down awful in terms of a change. The original one was fine. The 2004 DVD version was also acceptable. This one is just, it makes you question why. And that's the one thing that I kept asking myself with all the other Blu-ray changes. But moving on, we're going to go to a change that was introduced in the 1997 special editions, which is pretty much some additional shots of Mos Eisley to make the spaceport feel a lot busier and more grand. And concept-wise, I do like it because Mos Eisley did feel very small, because when you look at that view from the mountainside, Mos Eisley's pretty big. In some ways, I do like the smaller feel because it feels like a western town. But I also love how much busier it is in the special editions because it's just breathing with life. The only thing that I wish they didn't have were comedic moments like a droid smashing another droid to the ground, a giant creature I'm blanking on the name right now, but basically it's carrying a bunch of Jawas on his back, gets scared by a speeder, and one of the Jawas falls. And worst of all is when one of these things walks right in front of the camera and blocks the shot as the stormtroopers pull over Luke's land speeder, just as we're about to get our first full introduction to how the Force works and with the Jedi mind trick. So it's not something that I downright hate, but you really could have done without it. The next special edition change comes in the Mos Eisley Cantina. And no, it's not that one. Not yet. We're not getting to that one yet. But it involves a werewolf. In the original theatrical version, there was a werewolf just drinking blue milk in the cantina and then has a little interaction with one of the aliens. For some reason, that werewolf was removed and replaced by a few other creatures, one of them smoking a bong and some other creature. I don't get the point of this change. I never saw anything wrong with the werewolf. I don't know. It was weird. Although I gotta give credit to Jenny Tartakovsky and his Clone Wars micro series for including a werewolf Jedi. That's a little neat nod. Now, here we go. Here is the most controversial change, or I guess before the Blu-ray, the most controversial change, because something else has topped that, but I'll get to that when I get to it. You all know this one. It's the infamous who shot first, Han or Greedo. In the original version, Han Solo is confronted by Greedo just as he goes to prep the Falcon, and Greedo is hired by Jabba to try collect the money that Han owes Jabba. So Han and Greedo are sitting at the table. Greedo has his blaster pointed at Han, and Han is just sitting there so relaxed. And then he quietly lowers his arm down to his holster to grab his DL-44, and then underneath the table, without hesitation, shoots Greedo dead. Greedo doesn't even get a chance to fire. And it pretty much plays out like a scene in a Western, where the good guy always has to shoot first. However, during the 20 years that A New Hope has existed, somehow George Lucas thought, oh shit, no, I can't have Han being a cold-blooded killer. So, for some reason, he changed it to where Greedo shot first and then Han shot right afterwards. And look, it's a scene that lasts for a fraction of a second. Everyone's beaten this thing to a pulp. Like, people say, I've already beat the dead horse, or look, it's a dead horse, beat it. That horse has decomposed, and all that's left is like a bone or two, because everyone has talked about this scene and bitched about it. I will say that the one thing that really bugs me about this change is Han's digital head shift, and that Greedo is a worse shot than the stormtroopers. And I don't know, it's stupid. In the 2004 DVD version, it was changed to where the two of them shoot at almost the exact same time, but Greedo still shoots first. And then the 2011 Blu-ray, it's the best change of all, where they shoot at exactly the same time, and the scene runs for exactly as long as it does in the original version. But it just begs the question, if you were going to change it to where they shoot at exactly the same time, and it has the same time length as the original version, why not just put in the original version? I don't have much else to say about this. Like I said, that horse has decomposed and there's like a bone left, so I'm gonna move on. The next change is actually a scene that they originally shot for the movie back in 1977, but had to remove it due to time and the fact that they had no idea what this character in the scene was going to look like. I am, of course, talking about the scene where Jabba the Hutt confronts Han and Chewie in the hangar before they take off. Because Jabba the Hutt was originally supposed to be featured in A New Hope. It wasn't until Return of the Jedi where we got our official first look at Jabba the Hutt. And as a space slug, he's awesome. So putting this scene in the movie, I don't like it at all. Now, before I address the obvious elephant in the room, the reason I don't like this scene, the main reason, is because the dialogue being exchanged between Han and Jabba is exactly the dialogue that mirrors Han and Greedo's talk in the cantina. Right down to repeating the exact same lines. Look, Jabba, even I get bored sometimes. You think I had a choice? And another thing that I really don't like about this scene being in the movie is now Han's urgency to leave Mos Eisley and Tatooine as a whole is gone. In the original version, after Han shot Greedo, there is a sense of urgency that Han has to get the fuck out of Mos Eisley and Tatooine as a whole before Jabba finds out what he did. Because there's a bit of dialogue that Han Solo says just as they're about to take off, we're in a little bit of a rush, so if you'll get on board, we'll get out of here. So you instantly know, yeah, Han has got to get out of here because he killed one of his boss's associates. Now, because they added this scene in the special edition, Han and Jabba made a deal to where Han gets a little more time to owe Jabba the money, so the sense of urgency to leave Mos Eisley is not there anymore. And then another reason why I don't like this scene is because of the obvious elephant in the room. Jabba the Hutt looks like shit. In the 1997 special edition, he looks terrible. Even when the dewbacks looked okay, or those other creatures in Mos Eisley looked okay, Jabba looked awful. He looked nothing like he did in Return of the Jedi. His lip movements don't even match the dialogue. And there's that weird moment where Han walks over Jabba's tail, and he's digitally shifted upwards to simulate him walking over his tail. It's just awful in terms of the special effects. Now, in the 2004 DVD version, they did change it to where Jabba actually looks like how he does in Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace. But he still looks very out of place because this is 2004 technology in a scene that was shot in 1977 but was remastered in 1997. So it just doesn't, it's no good at all. I don't like this scene. I know it's a popular scene, but I'm not a fan of it. And then also there's the pointless cameo by Boba Fett. Boba Fett was never in this original scene when they shot it, so they digitally inserted Boba Fett in, and just as Jabba and his men are walking away, Boba Fett pauses, looks at the camera, and then walks away. How unsubtle. So all the changes I've been talking about have been mostly negative. I want to talk about a change that I actually do like, dare I even say love. And that's a lot of the new digital shots of the starships, mainly during the Battle of Yavin. There were a lot of shots with the Falcon, the TIE Fighters, the X-Wings, and the Y-Wings that just didn't look right. They looked very dated, and they were never exciting. For example, there's one awkward moment when the Falcon is headed towards Yavin 4 and looks like it's flying sideways, not straight forward. And then there's some very unimpressive, uneventful flight scenes in the Battle of Yavin. For example, TIE Fighters will be chasing down X-Wings, and you'll have Biggs say, "He's on my tail, I can't shake him." And the way the shots go, it makes me go, seriously? You must suck as a pilot. But in the special editions, a lot of the shots that just didn't look quite right are redone, and I think they look great. And they make a lot of the dogfighting shots during the Battle of Yavin a lot more exciting. And yeah, this is a change I actually don't mind. I actually love this change. Although I am glad that they didn't do it for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, because all the scenes involving the starfighters in those two movies were done practically, and they look goddamn amazing. When I did comparisons of the special editions and the original theatrical version, I was shocked to find out that the flight sequences in Empire and Jedi were all practical. So yeah. The next change is something that I'm mixed on, and that's adding Nova rings for the destruction of Alderaan and the Death Star. So in the original versions, when Alderaan and the Death Star were destroyed, there were no Nova rings. It was just an explosion. And now Nova rings are added into the special editions, and with Alderaan, it doesn't work because Alderaan is an organic planet. For the Death Star, though, I can let it slide because it does have a reactor, and you could make an argument that the kyber crystals that power the super laser are somewhat nuclear, so yeah, I could let it slide with the Death Star. I'm even fine with it for the Death Star 2 in Return of the Jedi. Now the last change that's worth mentioning is another added scene. This takes place right before the Battle of Yavin, and basically it's a miniature reunion with Biggs, Darklighter, and Luke Skywalker. Biggs was Luke's friend on Tatooine, and there's a brief exchange that the two of them have where they're so excited to see each other, and they're going to have their backs up there during the Battle of Yavin. And I like this scene because having this scene in here makes Biggs' death feel a lot more impactful, because you saw the brief exchange that these two had in the hangar, so you instantly know how upset Luke is that his friend got killed by Darth Vader. So yeah, not much else to add. I like this scene quite a bit. And those are all my thoughts on the changes for A New Hope. Obviously, there are some that I missed, like the new shots of the Sandcrawler, the new shots of Obi-Wan's hut. There's plenty that I know I missed, but I want to talk about the ones that really left an impact on me, or the ones that were the most noticeable. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Next week, I'll be covering the special edition changes for The Empire Strikes Back. So until next week, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below and tell me what your thoughts are on the special edition changes. Tell me of any changes that I may have missed. And as always, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.